The story begins in the city of Villach, where women are being killed on accusations of witchcraft. The church is commanding these executions through the Inquisition. The priest accuses these women of making deals with the devil, even as they scream that they are innocent. One of the women tries to explain that she only made ointments with pig fat to earn money. The other, so frightened, confesses to making a pact to try to be spared. The last one, with a frightening look, says that the priest will burn in hell. But even with the forced confessions, all end up being eliminated and thrown into the river. The soldiers were leaving, but the priest says that the orders from the Book of Solomon require that they be brought back to receive the sacred ceremonies to make sure they won't return. But one of the soldiers says he's sure the three died and then leaves, making the religious man nervous. Later, when night falls, the priest alone pulls the witches up and speaks sacred words to the dead bodies, not being afraid of the frightening movements of one of them. But when trying to pull the last one, he doesn't have enough strength and ends up being pulled, falling into the river. Very frightened, he tries to flee before evil takes him to death. The priest runs back to the bridge to look for the Book of Solomon to help him with the witch who is still in the river. But he doesn't have enough time, because the woman with the evil spirit jumps from the depths of the river and, using her power, burns the Book of Solomon and finally kills the priest in the same way they tried to do to them. Hey, what would you do if you had to take a person possessed by a demon through a forest full of dangers to save the world from the plague? The movie I'm going to summarize is called Season of the Witch. It's a movie that mixes action, adventure, and horror. Despite being a little-known Nicolas Cage film, it's a very good movie. It's a story about two crusade warriors who need to face evil forces to save humanity. That's why I invite you to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave a like to receive the best recaps. The story jumps to the Crusades, where we meet the main characters, Baemon of Blybrook and Felson, two Crusader knights who are great friends. For 12 years, they fight side by side in various battles, becoming famous as very good warriors. They participate in many fights, including the Siege of Tripoli, 1334, the Battle of Imbros, 1337, Arta, 1339, and lastly, Smyrna, 1344. In each war, hundreds of soldiers face each other in very violent combat, with the Crusaders attacking Muslim fortresses saying they were fighting for God. The battle that will change everything happens in Smyrna. When entering combat in the middle of fog, Baemon doesn't recognize the enemy and ends up stabbing his sword into a woman. After a bloody victory where thousands of people die, including women and children, Baemon begins to question if what he's doing is right. He has a tense discussion with the religious commander and begins to wonder if he's really fighting for God's will. The church representative says he follows what God's voice tells him to do, but the knight asks if it's really God who is guiding him. Getting disgusted with the violence he was doing in the name of faith, Baemon decides to abandon the Crusades along with Felson, knowing he will face problems if he lays hands on the commander. A month later, the two ex-Crusaders return to Europe and find a land they don't recognize. Sheep are grazing alone without shepherds, villages are completely empty, and abandoned houses have rotting bodies inside. Entire families died mysteriously, with swollen and deformed bodies showing a horrible death. The duo continues their journey until they find a city that seems habitable. Baemon wants to go to the place to get supplies, but Felson advises against it, since they are deserters. But knowing that their horses won't last another day of travel, they decide to go. When they arrive at a city that still has living people, they find a frightening situation. People with skin marked by the plague beg for blessings and mercy. A local merchant, Johann, explains that the plague has lasted 3 years, killing 3 out of every 4 people. The city is immersed in desperate prayer, with survivors hurting themselves and asking God to free them from the terrible epidemic. Later, while Baemon gets horses for them, a young boy wants to help the knight, but ends up dropping his sword, and the boy sees the symbol on the sword. So knowing they could be discovered, he calls Felson to leave as quickly as possible. When they go to the tavern, the knights are surrounded by a group of soldiers, but the duo reacts by knocking down the men. But the two are surrounded by archers and have no choice but to surrender. They are considered deserters and must be arrested. but a church priest called Debelzak stops them and asks to see Bayman's sword. Seeing the symbol engraved on the weapon, he invites them to another room and takes them to the presence of the church's eminence. Cardinal d'Amboise, who is visibly sick with the plague, tells them that the epidemic was brought by the Black Witch, whose confession he himself heard. The witch needs to be taken to Séverac Abbey, where monks have the last copy of the Book of Solomon, a book of ancient rituals that can destroy her powers and end the plague. Bayman asks why them instead of the knights. The Lord says that the church troops were completely destroyed by the plague. The old man says that Father Debelzak and Knight Johann will go with them to help them, but Bayman declares that he no longer serves the church. Knowing this will have serious consequences, being imprisoned for desertion. In prison, he sees Anna for the first time, a young woman who seems defenseless and is caged as the supposed witch. The two knights sit down, and Felsen starts laughing at how Bayman got them into this situation by what he said to the priest. Later, Bayman wakes up hearing crying and observes that the young woman has whip marks. The next morning, feeling sorry for the girl, he talks to the priest and says they will take the woman to the monastery. Soon after, they make a plan and the path they will follow, but Johann warns about the road that passes through the forest on the way, saying that men who went there and got lost never returned. Bayman asks if the priest knows anyone who has made the trip to Séverac, and he takes them to Hagamar, who is imprisoned for deceiving people. Bayman offers freedom and forgiveness to Hagamar in exchange for him guiding them to the monks' monastery. The knights go to find the witch sleeping, whom the priest says he put sleeping medicine in her food, but when they get close, she attacks them with force. Fortunately, Felsen and Bayman hold her and make her faint. They put her in a cage on the cart and begin their journey. When they leave the city with Anna in a wheeled cage, the population reacts with anger and fear, shouting to kill the witch and remove the plague from the city. Anna remains calm during the tumult, watching with a disturbing look. During the journey, tensions appear when Debelzak explains how Anna was found wandering near Marburg, speaking strange words. 2 weeks after she arrived, the plague struck every city she passed through. Hagamar questions this version, as the plague reached his village without Anna having passed through there. The knights talk, and Felsen warns Bayman that they are being followed, so they prepare a trap. The knight, following them, finds only the cart ahead, but is surprised soon after. Bayman asks who the young man is, and he says his name is Kay, son of a respected knight who lived in the church as an apprentice and helper. The young man offers his help, and in return wants the knights to test him, so he can be approved as a new knight. Felsen laughs at the young man who, not liking the insult, responds with ugly words. Felsen decides to teach the young man a lesson, and the two fight with their swords. Kay tries to prove he's ready to join them, but Felsen gives the young man no chances and shows that his experience is greater. Bayman stops the fight, and then they decide to leave, taking Kay with them. The expedition is now formed by 6 people: Bayman, Felsen, Father Debelzak, Hagamar the Guide, Eckhart, Cardinal's best knight, and Kay. The 240-kilometer journey will take 6 days, passing through the dangerous forest and mountains. During a night watch, Bayman takes food to the witch, who calls him to talk. He asks if it was the priest who hurt her, and she answers that it was. She asks what they will do with her, since in her village a simple little girl was accused of being a witch and was thrown in the river for a cruel death. But she survived, and they deduced she was a witch and threw her in the fire. Seeing fear in the young woman's eyes, Bayman assures her that she will have a fair trial, giving his word that none of these cruel deaths will happen to her. When he returns to the others, Debelzak asks if he spoke to the witch, warning that he shouldn't listen to her because the witch will try to corrupt them. The first watch is Johann's, but soon the priest comes to replace him. Johann talks about his daughter before leaving, when the young witch crying begs him not to go. But when he gets close to the cart, the woman pulls him towards her, and when the priest goes to help him, she takes his cross and stabs him in the hand. The others run to them, but when they arrive, they discover that the young woman has fled. They search for the witch and end up arriving at an abandoned village full of plague bodies. Suddenly, a woman runs through the village square, and when they surround her, they realize she's not who they're looking for. Seeing someone running to another location, they quickly follow her. They arrive at a hole area with corridors and a small labyrinth. Kay comes across a common grave, and Bayman and Felsen find another nearby. But Johann hears what seems to be the voice of his dead daughter, and hallucinating, he follows her. Unfortunately, no longer seeing reality, screaming his daughter's name, he throws himself against the frightened Kay, seriously wounding him in the chest with his sword. When the others arrive, Kay explains what happened, saying that the soldier didn't see him anymore, but spoke a girl's name. Felsen finds the young woman still trying to flee while fighting, but Bayman throws her against the walls. The young witch shows she's scared and begs them not to take her to the priest. The next morning, the knights and priest hold a farewell ceremony for Johann. After that, de Belzac tells Bayman that it was the witch who killed his companion and warns him to alert the others to be careful with what they say, because the witch listens and will use each one's weakness against them. The knight doesn't quite believe what the priest says and leaves, and then the witch smiles ironically at de Belzac. The journey reaches a wooden bridge in poor condition over a deep gorge. The crossing becomes a dangerous operation. Courageously, Bayman goes ahead and manages to cross, and then asks the other to cross first with the horses. After that, they prepare to cross the cart with the witch inside and almost fall into the abyss doing so. Kay is left hanging, but he can't hold onto the ropes and lets go. Fortunately for him, the young witch catches him by the arm with an abnormal strength for a young woman. Minutes later, the group manages to bring the cart safely before the bridge collapses completely. The expedition enters the feared Wormwood Forest, shrouded in dense and supernatural fog that makes it difficult to see and confuses travelers. Hagamar admits he can't see the path due to the thick fog, forcing them to camp until the fog passes. Bayman goes to talk to Anna about her saving Kay with one hand. She extinguishes the torch and lights it in the blink of an eye, saying that we believe in what we want to believe. During dawn, Hagamar walks through the night armed with a crossbow to kill the witch, fearing that more people will die. Bayman and Felsen stop him, but soon after, a pack of supernaturally large and aggressive wolves, controlled by the witch, attacks the camp. The battle is violent, with the men fighting with swords against the beasts, while Anna watches with a disturbing smile. The wolves show unnatural behavior, being more coordinated and intelligent than common wolves. The group is attacked, but everyone fights against the beasts until none remain. But more screams can be heard, so Bayman orders a retreat. Hagamar is surrounded and brutally killed by the wolves, leaving the group without a guide and with low morale. The survivors manage to drive away the remaining wolves, but the loss is devastating. The next morning, after leaving the forest, with Hagamar dead, Bayman tries to convince the others that Anna is responsible for the deaths, proposing to kill her right there. De Belzac defends her, arguing that 4 lives will be spared if they complete the mission, but he doesn't care about the priest's wish and knocks him down. But Felsen stops him and shows that his destiny is near. Hours later, the group arrives at the monastery entrance, but no one receives them. Kay enters through a small opening and opens the door for the others to enter. They find the place strangely silent. The priest takes them to the chapel, thinking the monks will be there, but actually everyone is dead due to the plague, in positions that suggest death during prayer. De Belzac becomes desperate with the discovery, questioning if God has abandoned them. De Belzac, without hope, kneels to beg God for mercy. But when Bayman interrupts him, a monk still lives and completes his prayer. The priest approaches him, and the monk points to the sacred book, and then finishes dying. De Belzac looks at the Book of Solomon and tells the others that in the pages of this copy are contained rituals, prayers, and spells used by priests to defend themselves against evil forces. They discover that the monks were making copies to distribute throughout the world, but their death interrupted the work. Bayman asks if the priest can speak the sacred words, and then shortly after we see him leaving the chapel ready to begin the trial. But the witch begins to speak, saying that for thousands of years, the church brutally killed her people, but she thanks them because the church itself caused more deaths than the plague. The priest begins the ritual, but the witch, having wounded his hand, causes considerable pain to him. De Belzac initiates the exorcism ritual, revealing that Anna is not a witch, but is possessed by an ancient demon. The demon shows impossible knowledge about Bayman's past and reveals his plan. He manipulated the entire situation to be brought to Severac. Anna transforms into her true form, a winged demon. The creature destroys its metal cage with ease and attacks the group. The evil goes towards the priest to stop him, and the knights can't stop the enemy. The priest burns the demon with holy water and continues the ritual, but the creature having wings flies to another dark part of the monastery. The group then tries to regroup and prepare an attack plan. Bayman asks young Kay not to continue, but the young man is determined to follow his oath even if it might lead him to death. Therefore, Bayman decides to consecrate him as a knight of honor. The four then begin the search for the demon, believing that he could have fled at any time during his journey, but for some reason chose to be there in the monastery. They analyze the path they took, and the men who wanted to free her or even kill her, the demon killed. This frightens them, because now they have to discover what the evil being planned. Bayman goes ahead and uses torches to illuminate the path and observe what the plague caused to the monks. Meanwhile, outside the monastery, dark flying beings come out of a thick, dark cloud and fly over the temple. Without them knowing, a dark being enters the body of one of the dead monks, while the priest discovers that his brothers were copying the Book of Solomon, trying to spread the sacred weapon so everyone could combat evil. Finally, Bayman realizes that the demon wants the book, which is why he made the young woman pretend to be a witch, knowing she would be taken to those who had Solomon's wisdom. Debilzak fears that if the book falls into the demon's hands, there will be darkness and eternal dominion of evil over the world. The voice of the evil being echoes in the chapel library, and everyone goes to where it is. It's now fully transformed, having the body of true evil. From the high ceiling, it thanks the group for bringing it there, and when the priest begins the exorcism, it throws objects at the group and then burns the copies of the book. When the knights get up, they realize that the monks' bodies have disappeared. Soon they begin to emerge from the darkness, wanting to kill the priest, because his words can weaken the infernal being. They discover that the monks are now under evil's dominion and even crawl on the ceiling. The knights fight against the enemies and defend the priest from death. Bayman discovers that they need to cut off the heads to destroy the evil inside the monks, and knowing this, Felsen and Kay do as Bayman said. Father Debilzak continues to speak the sacred words while the others fight against the many possessed monks that appear. They have great difficulty, and one of the possessed monks ends up wounding Felsen in the back. The knight defeats his opponent, but falls to the ground as if dead. Unfortunately, the unprotected priest is surprised by the demon who mercilessly breaks his neck. Just when he was about to grab the book, Bayman burns it with holy water, which makes the evil furious. The creature from beyond grabs Bayman's neck, saying it will destroy every trace of the book and anyone who gets in its way. Suddenly, before the worst can happen to Bayman, his friend still alive, Felsen grabs the creature from behind, saving his friend from death. But evil is powerful, and this time grabs Felsen with its wings and unfortunately burns him until he turns to ashes. When it turns its attention back to Bayman, young Kay surprises the enemy and continues to proclaim the sacred words of the ritual that makes the demon furious. It tries to kill the young man, but Bayman gets in front and drags the creature against the wall, trapping it with 2 blades while Kay proceeds to finish the prayer. The creature wounds Bayman's body, but he manages to hold it until Kay finishes the ritual. Suddenly, the creature's bestial body begins to burn and dissolve, and finally the evil is destroyed, freeing the young woman's body. Young Kay approaches Bayman and sees that his wounds are deep and he won't last much longer. Bayman tells Kay to protect the innocent young woman, and unfortunately he dies. Later, Kay and the young woman take a moment to say goodbye to the dead knights and priest. The woman introduces herself as Anna and thanks all the sacrifices made to save her. After the farewell, we see the two riding to return home, and Kay now holds the sacred book following the monk's wish to spread the sacred wisdom to face any evil that may come to this world. And so, the movie ends. What score would you give this movie? Don't forget to activate the bell to be notified of new summaries. So until next time,